Spartans, what is your profession? Hello, and welcome back to ancient Greece. Turn off my lightsaber. My name is Mr. Naughton. We're moving on today to lesson 3, which is all about the city-state of Sparta. So, today as we learn about Sparta, make sure you have your notes or your PowerPoint from lesson 3 to follow along, answer a couple of my questions. Today, the first part of lesson 3 is going to be about Spartan life, what life was like for the ancient Spartans. So, to get started with, Sparta is located in a region called Peloponnesus. Repeat after me. Peloponnesus. This is a region in southern Greece, so it's a bit further south of its neighbor Athens. Now let's think back to Athens. What were they known for? Their brains. Athens was extremely smart and intelligent and wise, so they made money off of trade, off of working with other city-states, not by fighting. In Sparta, the military was the heart of Spartan life. So, their military fought in a formation called something, where they were shoulder to shoulder behind their shields, using their spears. What was that called? It was called a phalanx. Very good. The Spartans used this all the time because the Spartans didn't like to farm. They would show up to other people's city-states and attack and take their stuff. Unfortunately, when they would invade, they would also take slaves. So they would conquer an area, they would take all the resources, all the farming goods, all the stuff that they could make themselves, and if there were people still left over, still alive, they would enslave them as helots. So these Spartan slaves were called helots, and they were really important to their economy. Without the helots, the Spartans wouldn't have any work get done because they're so focused on the military. So, now I have made some pictures for you. You're going to look at them, and we're going to go over what Spartan life was like. Let me get my pictures out for you. So again, in Sparta, it was all about the military. They only cared about conquering other city-states. So, right now, we're going to talk about what life was like for men and for women. But life always started the same. They would start with the babies. So, when a baby was born, let's see if you can see there, an elder would be asked to judge the baby. So you can see there's an old guy, he's looking at the baby, he's judging it, and if for some reason the elder determined that the baby was too weak, the baby would be thrown off of a cliff. There's actually a very famous cliffside in Sparta that was known for being the grave of dead babies. It was very, very arbitrary, meaning that there was no really clear method or reason why they killed the babies the way that they did, but there was one purpose, one reason for it. If a baby wasn't strong enough, they believed that it would not be able to fight well. They believed that it would not be a good soldier. So they only wanted the strongest in Sparta. So if you weren't the strongest, even from birth, yeet, you were thrown off the cliff. So that gives you an idea already at a young Spartan age. If they were strong, they would keep them. If they were weak, they would toss them out. And that even tells us about Spartan parents, because they agreed to this. They thought, oh, if the baby's too weak, just throw him out. So that was for both boys and girls. Now we're going to move on to just boys. So the next minute or two is just for boys, and then we'll have some information about girls. So, as a boy, if he was deemed strong enough to survive, as he grew older, by the age of 7, he had something to do. So from birth to the age of 7, they would stay with their family, stay with their parents. At the age of 7, 2 guards or soldiers would show up and drag that boy to military camp, drag him to boot camp. When they got to the boot camp, they would learn to read and write, but also how to use weapons, how to form the phalanx, how to use their spear and their shield and other pieces of armor to defend themselves, and more importantly, to defend Sparta. The number one job and occupation throughout Sparta for boys was being a soldier. That came first and foremost. So from the age of 7 on, these boys were treated really harshly. Sometimes their teachers and other adults that would train them would actually beat them. They believed that harsh treatment would make boys into adults who could survive the pain of battle. So, age 7, they're training, everything's going on. Around the age of 13 or 14, they would have their final trial. They'd be thrown out into the wilderness with only food and clothing and supplies for a couple of days, and they'd be expected to return from the forest in a month. That's right. They wanted their boys to learn survival skills that they could use in future warfare or defending Sparta. So the boys are growing up. He's going through puberty. He's getting older. And finally, he makes it through the challenges. Age 20, he can finally join the regular army. He can actually fight and serve his time in the regular army. And yes, that is every male in Sparta is going to be fighting in the army. Every single one, from the age of 20 till the age of 30. So for 10 years, they're serving in the military. At the age of 30, they can finally have a home and relax. They can finally start a family and have a home. However, this doesn't mean they're out of the military. If Sparta comes under attack or there's an emergency war going on, they would be called to still fight. So even though at age 30, you can have a home, you can have a family, you could still be expected to fight as a male. And then 30 years later, finally, at the ripe old age of 60, you can finally retire. If you're a man and you're fighting in the military, even though you have a home and a family, from age 30 to 60, you could still be called to fight. But at age 60, you can finally retire. Okay, so that was a lot about the boys. Now let's talk about the girls. There are 2 main things that women are expected to do in Sparta. They're expected to be strong. You can see there, I've got that lady lifting iron. She is pumping weights so that she can get strong like that lady with the big muscles so she can hold up a shield and a sword. Now you're thinking, but if the boys are the ones who are going off to fight, why would the girls need to be strong? Well, there's a couple reasons for this. First off, they wanted their sons to have the impression that their mothers are just as strong. Another reason was that if they were considered healthy or physically fit, they would be better off to have sons. If they were stronger and more physically fit, it would be easier for them to give birth. That was the Spartan belief. So they wanted to have strong women. Oh, and there's one other reason too. If Sparta came under attack and the men were away fighting at a war somewhere else, there were actually a couple occasions where the women of Sparta could actually defend the city-state. This is the first time in world history where women could fight battles. Pretty cool. The other reason, or the other main thing that women were expected to do in Sparta would be to raise sons. It's pretty obvious here. The more sons a Spartan woman could have, the more soldiers could be born in Sparta. And they could grow up to be big and strong and attack and defend for Sparta. So, to conclude things here, to wrap things up, what were men expected to do? And what were women expected to do in ancient Sparta? You've learned about both men and women in Sparta, and you've learned a lot about their culture. Remember, they were entirely focused on the military, all about strength, nothing to do with their brains. So, you've learned a lot about Sparta. You should be able to answer that question. In the next video, we'll wrap up Sparta and we'll wrap up all of ancient Greece. Remember, it's all Greek to me.